It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. It's Feedback Friday, and I got Furby ET in the co-pilot seat, and I got like ET bubble bath, and this is kind of terrifying. Okay, this ET looks like an ET in his bathrobe, chilling, all awesome, but who comes up with this stuff? Like, if you're gonna make bubble bath, like, make it squeeze out of his butt or something. Like, don't pull E.T.'s head off. Like have it, I don't know, something less terrifying than a decapitation. Like, what is this, man? Like, what is this? Anyway, okay. You can tell I'm still punchy. I'm still kind of overtired. But this is one of those rare Feedback Fridays where it's all gonna be only one comment. And this comment does not come from YouTube. It does not come from Twitter. It does not even come from Twitch. Though the person who initially approached me about it approached me through Twitter. But it's actually from a subreddit. A subreddit that advertises itself. I'm not super familiar with this subreddit. So, but it's our GG discussion. This is a place for discussion about Gamergate, when you can expect that people aren't going to scream and call you names. No matter what you believe, opinions are better advanced by honest argumentation and earnest discussion, and that's what we do here. And so somebody saw the video and posted quotes from the video, like excerpts, and then I did not know Feminist Frequency wrote an article on Yakuza 0 a few years back, but Kel Surprise, they had a very different take on it. And this subreddit post said, would it be interesting if somebody could politely show Leanna that Feminist Frequency article and see if she wants to respond to any of it? And somebody did politely show me the article. And I was like, did we play the same game? And so yes, I actually think it would be interesting if I responded to it. And I believe my response to the person who approached me was, challenge accepted, vroom vroom, word I will not repeat. So if you like this sort of thing, you know it's coming. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Support for these particular videos is appreciated because obviously I draw some grief. But now, preamble, this is not a beef, okay? Because I noticed this in the article. There's actually something highlighted in super, gender typical pink. There may be those who will argue that the sexism of a game like Yakuza 0 is so exaggerated that it actually calls attention to the misogyny in such a way as to function as a critique of it. I welcome these readings and value the opportunity to have my own perspective challenged. I often get far more out of interpretations of games that I disagree with than those that I agree with. However, while there may be validity to our personal, individual interpretations and readings, there is no doubt in my mind that a game like Yakuza 0 doesn't actually function as a critique in our culture. Two things. One, you may go, who wrote this? This is done by Carolyn Petit, and it was in 2017 when the game first came out. I'm late to the party on this one. But I'm going to draw your attention again. Yakuza 0 doesn't actually function as a critique in our culture. That's the first red flag I'm going to call. It's not our culture, not Western culture, not North American culture, not even Eurocentric culture. It's Japanese culture. Japan, culturally, is about the closest you can get to another planet without leaving Earth. Japanese cultural norms are very different. So we can't apply our culture to a Japanese game made for the Japanese market. There's like an article saying, oh, they're expanding to Asia, meaning, out of Japan. It's like, it's not a Western game. So we can't frame a critique based on our culture. We have to frame a critique based on Japanese culture. And I am no expert on Japanese culture by far. I had to have it explained that there are actually competitive rock, paper, scissors games in Japan. My mind is still blown from Twitch on Tuesday, finding that out. I am still in denial. But I know enough about Japanese culture to sort of go, that comment's off. A bit of background, the Yakuza series has a 20% female player base, which means 80% male player base. So to expect a game with an 80% male player base to be rooted in the female experience, first of all, that's not fair. This will be a male and masculine point of view, and I will maintain that it heavily critiques masculinity, both from a Western lens and critiques of Japanese sort of be a good host culture. It subverts all of the hierarchical traditional tropes to create very different kind of badasses. And whether you're in the West, whether in Japan, it will be a slightly different perspective. But we have to come at kind of the feminism of Yakuza 0 through the critique of masculinity that is Yakuza 0. And it does it very differently between Kiro and Majima. For people who don't know, there's two playable characters in Yakuza 0. They're both very, very different and very, very complex. But let's get into the article with that background kind of there. But I do feel very strongly that you cannot take a wholly Western approach to Yakuza 0 because it's not made about the West. It's not made for the West. It's a game set in 1980s Japan, a period of great excess. The game takes a lot of sort of looking back. There's a lot of subtle references to what was to come in the side missions. The fact that, the bottom was going to drop out of the economy and they were going to lose an entire decade. There's little things about taxation and all these things like really inside. I had to look a lot of stuff up while I was playing this game, but there is a lot of social satire. There is a lot of social critique, just not of North America, because it's a Japanese game set in the 1980s. Third wave feminism hadn't even started yet. Certainly not in Japan, not even here. Third wave feminism going in the 90s. What the fuck? What the fuck do you expect? You're expecting them to create a game set and apply concepts that didn't exist yet. Okay, moving on. Get into the article. Here we go. Okay, so I originally thought this piece might be about the ways in which Yakuza 0, the latest game in Sega's long-running Yakuza series, delights in and celebrates sexism. That's a big assumption. Okay. It gives us a world in which women are expendable, interchangeable playthings, and status symbols in the important dealings of men. Okay. First, the two male playable characters in Yakuza 0 are not important men. They are different types of low status men. They are both outcasts, like literal outcasts. They are ex-Yakuza that are like shamed. These are not, the Kiryu and Majima are not considered important. They have to get by. They have to do what they can. Just because they're earning money does not mean they're important. That's the poignancy of the game. The choices they make are extremely limited based on not only kind of the strict social structures of the time of what you can and can't do in terms of general honor codes, but also the hierarchy of the Yakuza and sort of the behind the scenes stuff there. They make it very clear that if they try to get uppity, they go after their family and friends. Or, you know, they nail Kiryu in the gut with a lead pipe in a motorcycle in a sewer. That scene was pretty awesome. Now I gotta say, does that mean the game's not silly? No, the game's extremely silly at times. But it's silly, and then it's serious, and it's silly, and it's serious. But to suggest that women are expendable, interchangeable playthings and status symbols in the important dealings of men assumes that the men you are playing as are important, and that's wrong. The whole point is they're not. Are they important to the story? Yes, because it's their stories. Are they important in the greater culture? No, they're not. Just because you have money does not mean you're important in this world. And they don't start with much money. But let's move on. A world where men revel in the objectification, exploitation of women. Now, this scene here where Nikashi is like, so if you show up with a pack of girls every time, the bosses invite you drinking, they remember you half the time, they give me cash on the spot. That's him bragging. That's not... I mean, if you know what happens in the game, that's the starting point. And then a world where men revel in the objectification and exploitation of women. Haven't you ever stared at a girl's photo long enough that her clothes started to melt away? This character's a bunch of guys in Yakuza 0 who are perverts that actually make Kiryu and Majima uncomfortable. And more on that in a bit, but this dude's a deliberate pervert. Just because his character says this doesn't mean the game is condoning it. It's ew gross, what is wrong with this dude, okay? And where this exploitation takes many forms, from telephone clubs and parlors where you can watch live action videos of sexualized infantilicized women, to the Japanese catfight club where you can place bets on women in bikinis wrestling for your enjoyment, just to name a few. Now, that's true. Yes, you can go to telephone clubs, right? You can go to the video clubs. The interesting thing about the way those are contextualized, at least the way I played the game, is I actually didn't have any interest in going there. I Twitch, they saw me, I was like going through it, it's like watching, and I try to watch it, and it's all very soft, like it's but I get to the nope, too young, skip. But there's a mission where you have to build up, or you know, it's advantageous to you to build up a friendship with the guy running the video business, the video club for your business, as Majima running the hostess bars. And to me, it really felt like I was back in television going, oh, I gotta go drinking. Because remember, this is the 80s again, right? I gotta go do this stuff, this ridiculous, like, hyper masculine chest beating performance. Oh, we're all super into sex and all that stuff. We're gonna have meetings at strip bars and all that stuff, and it's all bullshit. But I want this guy's money, so like I'm gonna go, right? My experience was more in the 90s, but to me, that interactive gameplay form of it, where I'm like, not again. Business. It's the business, you know. You can actually, if you complete the mission through, you can actually get a really, really good hostess working for you. And so the end of that is a woman who's high status and important. So you do a lot of shit, in my case, I didn't want to do because she was important enough. Completely different read than women are unimportant men, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now let's address the catfight thing. Because I found the catfight thing, yes, ridiculous and over the top. It is also the most utterly miserable, physically taxing minigame in the entire godforsaken experience. There is so much button mashing going on, and so that's the rock, paper, scissors thing, where you have to use a rock, paper, because to win and all that stuff. You can't do very much of this game without getting carpal tunnel syndrome. The mashing is so brutal. So they deliberately made the ridiculous over-the-top TNA. And like, ladies wrestling was a phenomenon in the 80s. And to me, because the game is looking back with sort of this wistful nostalgia of, because we were stupid in the 80s, we fucked up, you know, the 90s into the 2000s. To me, this was something where they were pointing out the excess in the rearview mirror. But they also made the mini games miserable in a way. It's painful for me because of my hand problems. But I really think they made the mini games taxing, because if you want the perv, you're going to have to earn it. This isn't the showers in Dead or Alive Extreme volleyball, right? Like, you're not just sitting there watching a girl shower and moving the camera around. You're mashing like your life depends on it. Like, you know, when the mashing's so bad, you can't press with your thumb anymore. You have to switch grip and just like pound on it like it's an old arcade cabinet. It's that kind of mashing, okay? So you're not going to do view after view after view after view of the catfight wrestling. You got to tap out because you're just too tired. I maintain that matters. I maintain that's the game making critique and commentary of this practice that actually did exist, but it's doing it through gameplay, not through plot, not through script, because it's a game, not a movie or television show. That matters. In this world, women by and large exist for the pleasure of men. One of the game's playable protagonist, Majima, is introduced in a scene in which he is working as the manager of the hottest hostess club in Sotenbori, the Grand. When a male customer sexually assaults a hostess, it is presented as an act of masterful management skill and benevolence that Majima handles the situation in a way that lets the male customer save face and walk away with his reputation untarnished. The women's experiences don't matter. Absolutely fucking not true. This is just wrong. This is just a wrong interpretation. They missed... Caroline Petit missed all the subtext here. All of the subtext. The whole point of Majima pulling an extended beta male routine to this guy to get the best of him is, again, because this rich businessman is an important figure in Japanese culture. And Majima, his first name's Goro, which is like, he doesn't have 4 arms, but he's cool. Well, it's the last name in Japan, you know what I mean. But Majima does not matter. He's stuck there. He can't just take this guy on. But they actually say that basically if they turn them over to the cops, then that woman basically got assaulted for nothing. Nobody makes any money out of that. He's a lost customer. You know, the only way to make what happened to her a worthy sacrifice instead of just a shitty thing that happened is to milk this guy for every penny that he is worth. And so Majima does this whole very elegant fake beta routine where he's saying he wants to preserve the man's reputation. But what it really is a shakedown of epic proportions. The only way this guy gets out of this going to jail mess is if he pays the tab for the entire club. So like millions and millions and millions of yen spent. It's basically a fine, which, let's face it, somebody with that much money and power in the 1980s, that's all that was going to happen to him anyway. He'd lawyer himself out, you know, it wouldn't matter. This interpretation that was all about Majima showing his power, no, it was Majima being subversive and making the best out of a situation and Time and time again, those hostess bar scenes show that Majima is actually not worth much more to the culture at large than the women are. But it's all about making money. So, he hires women who, one girl is doing it because she's super shy and wants to work on her social skills. Another girl, he takes away from an abusive situation. The second platinum hostess you recruit, is very clearly being abused by the owner of Club Mars. And, Majima hires her, and in their little training sessions, you can sort of tell girl is not all there because of her experiences. And then you get people like Dolly, who's actually in debt to the Yakuza. Dolly's an older woman, and so he's helping her pay off the debt in a way that isn't miserable and doesn't get her kid threatened by Yakuza anymore. They don't slice up her kid's toys. This is saying women don't matter? This is saying women are just props? Most of the platinum hostesses all have very distinct stories. Some of the gold hostesses also do. Less so than the platinum hostesses, but I think that was probably a resource thing. Many of these women have ongoing stories where you find out about their personal lives. There's an entire mini game where you basically have to get the answers right so that they do more stats, but it's all about getting to know them and knowing what the correct responses is. These women are well-rounded, fully developed characters that matter to the story. So this objectification argument is just wrong. The next thing, later, when a Yakuza boss kills a woman in cold blood after the game's other protagonist, Kiryu refuses to join with him, Kiryu doesn't flinch. I'm pretty sure I saw Kiryu flinch. Now, Kiryu has sort of a stone face. I interpreted this moment as shocking. I thought Kiryu was shocked. Kiryu, the very image of a tough yet deeply soulful male hero, betrays no emotion at all in response to the wasted humanity. Kiryu's dumb as rocks. And at that point, he was being hunted like an animal. Remember the scene I told you about where he got beasted in a subway with a pipe from a guy with a motorcycle? Yeah, this scene happens right after that. Dude had just had his bell rung. Expecting Shakespearean level reactions of, oh, what a horrible thing, this waste of life, how can I go on? William Shatner style. No, that's not reasonable to expect. The guy's probably bleeding internally. I'm going, how do I get out of this? Just, okay, it's not the reaction you wanted, but that doesn't mean it's no reaction, okay? And then they get in this weird thing about the secretary in the real estate organization. When Kiryu stumbles into having some control over real estate organization, the woman, Marina, who is hired to serve as a secretary, opts to call him president, even though he's not really the president of anything, because she actually wants to be as demure and secretariat as possible. It's gross. That's not what I took from it. I took from it, this is a guy. Kiryu is a real estate agent, but he's actually a hired thug. Because that's what they need. They need somebody who can go in there and beat up squatters and shit like that. So Marina's one of the people that Tachibana, the actual power from the shadows dude, hires to basically create an illusion. The same way Majima is doing an illusion in the in the hostess bars. They're creating an illusion for Kiryu because he's not that smart. He can't really do it on his own. He's just doing what he's told. But again, it's all creating these elaborate facades, this face, right? Because they do have no power. And so they need to do business sleight of hand to get anywhere. And they actually talk about the fact, they actually do an extended thing where Tachibana talks about the fact that where he comes from, everybody just uses everyone. And he appreciates that Kiryu is loyal and wouldn't sell him out no matter what. And the scene where the girl gets killed is deliberately shocking because Kiryu, for all he thought he was going to die in that moment. And he still didn't sell out Tachibana-san. Why it all became about he didn't do anything to save this woman, that's easy to say when you've swallowed a diet of Western action movie pap where women are used as props for men to save, to show how hyper masculine and heroic they are. You know, the very thing that feminist frequency tends to complain about, the whole damsel in distress thing. In this case, the whole thing was to show Kiryu's powerlessness, that he couldn't save her. Nobody could. She was helpless. He is helpless. You're supposed to see Kiryu relating to her and realizing that he's as disposable to the Yakuza as she was. The whole idea was he was next. It's assuming, it's expecting men to be all the stereotypes that feminist frequency claims to oppose, to demand that he attempts to save her, or, you know, is all pieces and have a big reaction. The three reactions to like scary situations are freeze, fight, or flight. And freeze is the most common one. It's actually more realistic than what we normally get in media in that regard. So these are just a few examples. The more I played the game, the more I started to feel that an exploration of its misogyny would be complicated by the fact that it is so relentlessly, exuberantly, shamelessly misogynistic from its very first moment onward that it quickly works to normalize its own sexism. Many players would respond to any identification of its sexism with a shrug, as if to say, it's just Yakuza being Yakuza, what do you expect? The very fact that it's so relentless and outrageous in its sexism comes to function as a defense, because to point out that sexism is to point out the blatantly obvious, and no one wants to have the blatantly obvious pointed out to them. These are gamers. Of course we want the blatantly obvious pointed out to us. That's usually part of the humor in Japanese games, pointing out the blatantly obvious. Anyway, it seems condescending, insulting. We feel as if because the sexism is so obvious, it's also harmless. We can spend a while enjoying the idea that women are mere sexual objects, playthings, and status symbols as a bit of goofy, lighthearted fun. Hold on. We feel as if, well, who's we? The person playing the game, right? We feel as if, because the sexism is so obvious, it's also harmless. No, that's not the interpretation I got at all. The interpretation I got at all is that this Japan doing commentary on 80s Japan is saying there are so many levels of dehumanization driven by an excess of money just flowing into the streets and corrupting them. They're literally throwing money in the streets to solve problems, okay? And yeah, everything is commodified in the game. Grown-ass men are beating up children for video games because it's all about consumption. It's all about consumerism. You'd think that these, like, you know, armchair down with capitalism types would have appreciated that, but apparently unless it's point to this thing being bad, unless somebody stops and does an I am a villain style speech like Iago from fucking Othello, they can't get it. And I think this might be why. Because the supposition that we can spend a while enjoying the idea that women are mere sexual objects, playthings, and status symbols is a bit of goofy, lighthearted fun. No, I didn't. I don't. Women being sexual objects, playthings, and status symbols is not goofy, lighthearted fun. I didn't feel that way for a minute playing the game. I can't control if Carolyn Petit had that reaction, but I certainly did not. And this is the thing. When you start assuming that is going to be the player's reaction. Again, you're coming from the school of some sort of filmmaking technique forcing the viewer into a particular frame. Video games are not like that. Because you're interacting with a game, it's a different conversation. How do I feel about this? We had a thing, we were doing a makeover on the second platinum girl, the one I said who was abused. It was like a couple dozen, mostly dudes in a Twitch chat, really, really invested in hairstyles and nails and clothes and jewelry. And it's like, guys, we got to give her a look that she's going to like. Not that we like, that she's going to like. And we ended up putting her in glasses because one guy said, do it or we riot. It was pretty sexy. But it was an entire thing of, let's make this girl happy. Let's make this girl feel good. Let's make this girl feel pretty and classy. And she was in a really trashy outfit when she started. It didn't suit her. It didn't look terribly good. And so we put her in like this elegant dress and this cool updo and all this stuff. And it was like straight up respect the waifu territory. Though Yuki is waifu, fight me. But it was a totally respectful treating I like a person exercise to the minutest detail. Would this girl feel confident and comfortable in this outfit? And guys were basically going, I don't care about min-maxing the stats. Like, this looks better. This is more in her character, all that stuff. And we had a whole discussion about beauty and all. It was not at all treating women as sexual objects. It's on my Twitch channel. If you want to go watch it, it's there. Maybe I'll clip that part so people can see it. But this is the thing about games. Two people can play the same game and get totally different experiences because of what they bring to the table. And if the writers of Feminist Frequency, if Carolyn Petit back in 2017 had an overdose of internalized misogyny that impacted her interpretations of this to this extent. Notice I said if, not that she did. But if that's what's going on here, that's not the fault of the game. The game can lead people like her to a lot of subtleties, yes, but very real critique of Japanese hierarchies in business and gender and social class and, you know, coming from the right families versus not coming from the right families, business etiquette. There's a lot of layers going on. But if you don't go into that as an informed player and you miss it, that's not the fault of the game, right? So to close, it says, allowing misogyny to remain normalized or to be further normalized is dangerous. Misogyny has so much power in our culture, largely because it has already been so normalized. It is seen as natural, just the way things are, just reflections of the differences between men and women. It is what lets Trump get away with saying that his boasts about sexual assault are just harmless locker room talk and still go on to be president. Again, Japanese game. Okay. I'm going to skip a bit. So do cultural critics have a responsibility to continue working against the normalization of sexism, racism, and the ideology of domination through violence in our mass media? But that work is complicated. It requires self-reflection, introspection, a willingness to think critically about our own feelings and desires, as well as about the media we engage with. Okay, challenge. I would invite Carolyn Petit and the others at Feminist Frequency to consider that perhaps the problem in their interpretation is them and not the game. That I basically played the game, watched and aided by a room full of men who, during the catfight section, was educating me on Japanese competitive rock, paper, scissors. Mine's still blown. And during the hostess bars with the women who are just sex objects, we were super invested in making an outfit that this fictional, not real woman would feel happy in. That's the interactivity in games. If playing a game like this brings out a monster in you, address that monster. Because I watched firsthand that not happen with the particular group of people that I was with. Now, yes, okay, I have cultivated an audience where misogyny is not normalized. That's the work. And okay, it's not that big, but, it's a bunch of people who maybe would have some very different ideas. I mean, one of my biggest achievements during Gamergate personally was I saw people go from feminism is cancer to third wave sex negative feminism is cancer. It's those little things, right? But games are interactive, and it's not the same as passively sitting and watching a movie. You have choices. You choose as Majima, manager of this club. Oh, I think he's owner. No. Somebody else owns it. I don't remember. Maybe he owns it. Yeah. But owner of this club. You can choose to treat your hostesses like pieces of meat. Or you can choose to treat them like actual people. You're not supposed to overwork the girls, and you're supposed to protect them from abusive customers. How is that treating them like objects? You can reward them, you can praise them, you give them breaks, you help them with their families. What the How is this treating women like mere objects? I don't see that. The only way you get that impression is if you go in with the pre-existing notion that women in those jobs are nothing but pieces of meat. If you go in there as the pervs, they're like, because don't forget I did jobs like this, right? I own a Japanese maid outfit. But, your job in those gigs is not to be a piece of meat. Your job is to be a savvy psychologist and business person and milk that pervy fucker for every cent he's worth. If you get regulars that are super cool guys, different transaction. But if you've got a guy where it's just about the money, it's about that money. It's actually the client in those situations that is interchangeable, is fungible. And in fact, the men that come into those bars, they don't have names, they don't have stats, they don't have interests. They're poor, average, wealthy. They're wallets that order drinks. If anybody's reduced to objects, if anybody doesn't matter in these games, at least in Majima's story, it's the men they're sucking the money out of. They actually say that if you spend all the money, it's bad business. That's what another club does. You need enough money for the guy to come back. But those dudes don't have names. Those dudes, it's just poor, average, wealthy. This is all right there. I'm not stretching anything. I've just spent 40 minutes just describing what is in the game accurately. Not adding or removing stuff to make a pre-existing thesis stick. The problem with a lot of feminist frequencies analysis is that they themselves seem to have no respect for women in hospitality or sex work. And so they assume objectification when it's actually psychology and commerce. It is actually a skill that they don't respect. Because for all their sound and fury, they actually have a very sex negative approach to things. And all them saying otherwise, there's one part, I want more sex in games. I want more realistic sexuality in games in this piece. The lady doth protest too much, methinks. Every time there's the slightest bit of sexuality in a game, they never respond positively when it's glamorized or romanticized or a woman is beautiful. The only sexuality they seem to reward is when Abby's getting bent over with no lube in The Last of Us 2. That's not the fault of the games. Was that harsh? Yeah, unfortunately. I gotta call it as I see it, you know? And they keep throwing down the gauntlet and challenging everybody else to be more introspective and to challenge their own internalized misogyny. All they have to do is take their own advice. You like this sort of thing? Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. See, it's exactly like a hostess bar. Thanks for watching.